we're good.
Okay, Kate, we're doing a validation session this morning, or we're organising validations for 3 units, and maybe we'll kick off with the FSK OCM, participating in simple interactions at work.
Yep.
So the purpose of the session is to work out how we're going to validate the assessment tool that's been developed for this unit, and we're going to need to complete the forms that are part of the task 3 in this in assessment 403. And I think so. The purpose of this session is to talk about the context, the scope, and the of the validation, and I suppose by the end of it we need to sort of work out also who's going to do what work and how we're going to get it done when we'd like to get it done by. Shall I talk a little bit about what I think the context and the scope are, and then maybe we could talk about the what, who does what and when?
Yeah, I think so. So just how we're going to approach it. So I guess we'll do the validations separately to begin with. That's how we'll probably be approaching them, and then just communicate throughout to make sure all the same.
Yeah. But if there was, I'd kind of had the same assumption. But if there is anything that if you wanted to, if it makes sense to divide anything up or whatever, maybe we can just think about that too. But I was sort of thinking as well that we'd go away and actually fill out the forms separately and then swap and check in with one another.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way of doing it, I think.
Did you have any sort of timelines in mind? Like, were you wanting to get this sort of, submitted by a particular time?
I don't think, from what I can see, with the tools that we're using, it shouldn't take us too long, I don't think. So, a couple of days, you think?
Yeah, something. I can certainly put a bit of time into this again on Friday.
Yeah, great.
And I work 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And at the moment have Wednesdays and Fridays to focus on my studies.
Okay, yeah.
So I could certainly do some again on Friday, and so I'm thinking I'd probably have them done more like by Wednesday next week.
Yeah, that's okay.
Does that seem...
I'll have heaps of time. I'm not working I've got Friday off as well, so I can focus on Friday as well, and then we'll just compile it and make sure we sort of email throughout maybe, and then by Wednesday next week we'll compare and then come to some conclusions about validations.
And look, I might get it done a bit quicker than that. Work do only a day or so here and there, so I might even be able to fit it in a bit sooner than that.
Cool, no problem.
Okay, well then I think maybe in some ways we've sort of dealt with the sort of the how and the timing.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to apply for the other sessions as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of the FSK OCM, I thought sort of the important context things for me are that it's a level 2 unit.
Yeah.
So when we're doing the validations, we're sort of keeping an eye that it's appropriate for that sort of, that the questions and the assessment instruments are appropriate for that level. That probably applies a bit across the board. The same with the fact that it's a vocational training unit. So when I'm doing the validation, I'm going to be looking to see whether it's being adapted to workplaces and all the work desires and aspirations, if you like, for the learners.
Yeah, makes sense.
A bit more specific to this one is that the unit, I reckon, is likely to be undertaken a bit by people who might speak English as an additional language.
Yes.
And or by people maybe with some lower level language skills. So I thought that when I'm reviewing it, I'll kind of want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it should be adaptable for LLM, and be able to be context as such as well. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you might that flexibility and fairness aspects of the principles of assessment sort of will be coming into play.
Yeah.
I think for me, and that there's the ability to make reasonable adjustments.
Yeah. Throughout, I think. Yeah.
And I thought one of the in terms of the kind of this probably goes a bit to the validity component, but this unit really focuses on speaking skills.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think, when we're validating, checking very carefully that that's what we're assessing and we're not assessing other language skills like reading.
Yeah, or writing even as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the unit does look like it is focused solely on just the ability to conduct conversations in the workplace. So we don't want to sort of make sure that the assessments are appropriate to that, and there's not too much writing involved. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I thought, in terms of context, they were kind of the really, they were the key things for me.
Yeah.
In terms of then what I've put under the heading of scope is that we need to go through and look at all of the formal unit requirements.
Yes.
So we need to map that all of the performance, evidence, competencies, foundation skills are all being met.
And they have provided us with a map. So we've got an assessment matrix as part of the assessment plan. And within the tools themselves, they have a compliance map as well. But I think that we should also double check that and just make sure that it's being met appropriately.
Yeah, and when I can't remember when I looked at this particular unit for one of the other, I think maybe they did miss out, they might have missed a couple of
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure if it was this one or there was another one. They missed the knowledge evidence, I believe. So we need to go up and try and have a look at that one. But yeah, I think that because we've used these first two tools we've used before for our other assessments, but I think they all look pretty good, but we do need to just thoroughly check them for all the performance criteria, performance evidence, knowledge evidence, and also assessment conditions too.
Yes. That's really important too. I sometimes can forget about those.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make sure.
We won't rely on their compliance map too much. We'll check it, but we'll also look at training.gov and actually have a look at the units. Not just this one, but all three.
Yeah. And look, then I suppose it's really about, for me, I was thinking working through the principles of evidence and the principles of assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't forget those.
And I think in terms of the principles of evidence, I think I've already mentioned that the one that stood out for me that's special is validity, really making sure that these tools are assessing speaking skills and not other language skills.
Absolutely.
So they were the ones, obviously we've got to look at sufficiency and authenticity and currency, but that stood out for me. But did you sort of have any other observations about those?
No, not in particular. I think, just moving through each one. We'll go through all of the tools. I believe there's three instruments in this tool. So if we just keep that in mind for each one, and just approach each one separately when we're doing it, then if anything comes up, we should be able to find it, I believe.
Yeah. And then in terms of the principles of assessment, I do think fairness and flexibility that we've touched on could be quite important, so that making sure that reasonable adjustments can be made, and also that in terms of flexibility, just bearing in mind we could have students of different cultural backgrounds undertaking the assessment. So keeping that in mind, like you said, sort of working through each of those principles, but keeping those in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, go on.
I was just going to note something I think you've already brought up as well is just making sure the assessments in this one and for all are really clear and that they can be used not only by the one certain context, but they can just be used in an array of different contexts, and that they are clear enough and simple enough and effective enough that they can be used across the board.
Yeah,
so making sure that that's evident and it's really clarified in there.
Yeah, no, I think that sort of that clarity is a really important point.
Yeah.
And look, the only other thing I thought that I'd keep an eye on, which again will probably apply to all three, is for this unit, are they using appropriate methods to collect the evidence?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they could be.
Yeah, looking for things like plagiarism or, that again touches on the principles of assessment and evidence too. But just making sure they're conducted in a way that is appropriate to that too, agree.
Yeah. So look, that for me sort of covers that first unit.
Yep. Oh.
Do you mind actually doing maybe the next two units, particularly since I think you might have spent a little bit more time thinking about the final one?
Yeah, absolutely. I can.
But I'll jump in with, I do have thoughts about both of them, but I am aware that I think you might have spent a bit more time, particularly thinking about that final session.
Yeah. So the next one is FSK OC. Oh no, it's not. Next one is.
I think it does start with FSK.
It is FSK WTG06, and this is right simple workplace information. So, very similar to everything that we've kind of covered in the previous one, only this time the focus isn't on sort of a speech assessment, it's on actually writing workplace information. So, firstly, we'd need to make sure that the assessments are appropriate to that. That is, the assessments are being sort of in the context of assessing written work rather than anything that might be verbal or any other kind of context. Then, pretty much most things we've covered in the previous one. I do believe it's a level 2 unit as well. So making sure that the assessments are appropriate in that way, again. Making sure all of the principles of assessment and the rules of evidence are adhered to. I believe there's actually 4 instruments in this one, so we'll need to go through and make sure that that's all being met in each of those. They have given us an assessment matrix and a compliance map for each assessment instrument, which is helpful, but again, we should go back and check that that's actually been done correctly and cross-reference with the unit itself on training.gov.au.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think specifically for this one, they've given us a target group summary, but I would agree with this one as well. It could be used for people who might be LLM challenged.
Yes.
So we should make sure that it can be, that there is room for adjustments, that it does have that flexibility. Again, that comes into the principles of assessment. But just making sure that is carried throughout. Yeah, we have used this one before in some of our other assessments, so it's quite familiar to us. And I think we've already kind of deemed it to be pretty good and quite easily sort of understood by the assessor and the student.
Yeah, I think this one, almost many of the things that we said for the previous unit are going to apply.
Yeah.
And really as you pointed out, the thing that's a bit different is we're assessing writing here, but it's a similar sort of group of people who are going to be undertaking assessment.
I think we do the first one, and then if we just keep, once we move on to that second one, if we keep just the same method and everything else we've already kind of discussed in mind, then I think we'll be able to get some pretty good results on that one as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. The last one is a bit different. This is BSB IND 201, which is work effectively in a business environment. Now, I'm not sure if this would be a level 2 or a level 3. I think it is still a level 2.
I tried doing a little bit of a search. I was finding it difficult to find clearly, but it does have the 2 in the title, so I'm pretty sure it will be level 2.
So, yeah, I agree. It should be pretty. Yeah, I think you're right. This assessment tool, just from the get-go, I haven't looked over it thoroughly yet, but it looks quite simple to me, and it looks quite vague. It's been sort of the tool itself. It seems a little rushed to me, so I feel like we need to pay particular attention to this one to make sure that those rules of evidence and the principles of assessment are being met in the criteria, and also that it's being effectively administered and it's sort of adhering to all of the compliance rules with that. That it's clear. I feel like it's not overly clear. This is just from having a quick look at it, but I feel like we need to pay particular attention to this one.
Yeah, I think even I agree with you. It doesn't look terribly clear. I think the other difficulty, even with good instruments in sort of unit, is that it looks to me like you're kind of assessing quite a lot of soft skills like teamwork.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think we're going to have to really, I'll probably think a bit more hardly about this one and about whether it really is collecting the evidence and being really clear about what good examples of teamwork
are. Absolutely. And also making sure and bringing that back to the assessment conditions and the performance evidence and performance criteria and knowledge evidence as well. Which they have actually given us that in conjunction with the assessment tool, so we can reference that quite easily. I'll have a look at it online as well too. But yeah, it does. They've given us a compliance map as well, and that already looks quite unclear to me. They haven't used appropriate sort of wording, I don't think there. Also, the tools themselves look very vague. They look like the questions, especially there's a very big written test as a part of it, so it's not really incorporating, I don't think, a lot of different assessment methods.
Actually, I think I had that down as quite a key thing, whether the assessment methods were appropriate here.
Yeah, and the questions themselves don't look to actually correlate well enough to the knowledge evidence that's required. So I don't think that they're accurate testers, just from a vague look, but yeah, we'll go through and we'll figure that out when we're conducting the validations and having a proper look. But yeah, this one... go for it.
Here you go. Okay. I think the other one, the thing maybe worth bearing in mind here too, is that we're probably dealing with some people who don't have some basic work-related skills.
Yes, yeah.
But it just sort of comes back to me about, looking carefully at those assessment methods, looking carefully at what sort of evidence is being collected. Is there a really clear assessment rubric developed so that very clear to different assessors what sort of evidence is being collected and how you judge that evidence?
Yes, yeah, I agree. This one particularly, I think, needs our attention. But if we do the first two first, and we follow that same kind of method that we've discussed, by the time we get to this one, I think we'll be ready to tackle it, because I think we'll have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll be able to do it. Just as long as we keep all those things in mind. And yeah, we'll come up with some suggestions for the authors.
Yeah. Okay.
Sheets.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if we really, as you say, with this one, if we'll get the other two out of the way first.
Yeah.
And maybe even we should touch base after those other two
Yes.
to make sure we're both on the same page with our findings, with our review, and then maybe we'll do this one after we've done those two.
That's a good idea. Yeah. So we've practiced.
That's right.
Yeah, but I think it'd be good if we just follow the templates that we've been given and sort of make sure we're addressing all of the questions, which those questions in that template I think covers basically everything that we've spoken about. So we might need to do a few other things in addition just to make sure we're thorough, but I think if we just follow those questions, fill them out, follow all those rules, then we'll be covering everything that we're sort of hoping to do.
Yeah, right. And look, if you want to, even though I think we don't have to record, the rest of the work that we do, if you want to meet in person or anything to go through to do any of those checks, that's fine. But I'm also happy to do it by way of email.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whichever. We'll touch base on Friday and see how we're going with it. And then,
Good.
We'll decide
I'll make a note
what we want to do.
touch base. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So you've got all those tools there.
Yeah.
As well, don't you?
Yeah. So I've got all the tools. I've used to using training.gov by now.
Yeah, used to it a lot, haven't we? Yeah.
But
Good.
So all should be good.
Excellent.
Okay. We'll talk a bit. Talk later. Or do you want to stop the recording, but then do a quick test?